you've enjoyed watching this series. And I know it's touched my heart, whether you're here today because you're suffering from anxiety and depression, or you know of a loved one who is. I thank you. I thank you for taking the time out of your life to want to improve emotionally and help other people with the resources that you've been learning throughout this series. So, because it's a complicated and it's such a complex world to navigate, and there's so many different alternatives. And I know that sometimes we can feel stuck and be experiencing a deep sensation of pain. So I'm really grateful to be in this room with all of you today, and just to know that in some way or another, your life will be changing and you'll be taking the steps necessary. Don't forget, I know that a lot of you must have had a lot of questions throughout the series and even during this live that we're having for you guys here today. So submit any questions that you have via email to support@anxietyanddepressionseries.com. support@anxietyanddepressionseries.com. And again, thank you all for being here today. I'm really excited to just bring some light and joy into such a rough topic. And so I have Dr. Nicole Shrednicki and Dr. Radha Gopalan here today. They are experts in everything they do. They've helped me personally, actually. So with my, anxiety, depression, emotional state, and health overall. So I'm happy to be here with both of you. And I'd like for both of you to introduce yourselves.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. Thanks for having us. And we're so happy to be part of this program and to be able to contribute to the community, because this is such an important topic and affects so many people. And there are things that you can do to help to reduce anxiety or improve, depression. And so we're going to get into all that. But anyways, a little bit about me. I am the founder of Ultra Healthy Human, high performance health for high performance people. So I deal a lot with high stress, anxiety, mood issues, but I kind of look at it from a different perspective. I say the last thing I want to do is write a prescription. So if there's other things that we can do to reduce these symptoms, that's always the first thing I want to do. The reason that I got into this type of medicine was back when I was in school. I wasn't so happy with what conventional medicine was teaching me. So, I felt like we were just pushing a lot of prescriptions and doing whatever insurance wanted us to do. And I said, there has to be more to help patients. And so when I graduated, I did a fellowship and became board certified in anti-aging and regenerative medicine. And then I did another fellowship in natural medicine. And then I started my practice so I could bring both sides of medicine to the table, both Eastern and Western. And so I do a lot with detoxing and bioidentical hormones and biologics, IV vitamins, things like that, but also really comprehensive blood work so we can really understand what's going on inside of somebody. Are there different factors contributing to or causing stress, anxiety, depression? So I kind of look at medicine. I try to look at it from an alternate perspective, and I love what I do because my patients see results. And so that's just a little bit about me.
Thank you so much, Nicole. That's been amazing. And, I'm a testimony to, all the lives that you've influenced and impacted with just your knowledge and expertise. So thank you for being here today. And Dr. Radha, I am so happy to have you here today. Could you please introduce yourself as well?
Thank you so much, Alex. And thank you, Nicole. I am a professor of medicine at University of Arizona and an acupuncturist and a yoga teacher. And I am an expert in Western medicine and Eastern medicine. I practiced both for many years. I've been in Western medical practice for over 35 years. And Eastern medicine is longer than that because I learned Eastern medicine like acupuncture and yoga therapy many, many years ago, ever since I grew up in an Ayurvedic tradition. So more of a health-oriented guy, and full disclosure, I will be talking to your audience today as one of their fellow person and not as a medical doctor, but I will share knowledge that I have acquired and accumulated as a doctor so that they can use it for whatever the purpose it must be. And I'm very excited to chat with the group and answer their questions as I see the devastating consequences of anxiety and depression in my patients every single day. And even as I speak today, I have firsthand experience of how depression can be devastating and cost life of my patients. So it's a very special topic, and I'm excited to share my what I know, and as a fellow human being, not as a professor, not as a medical doctor, but as a fellow human being, and share my pointers and some information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rada. I know I've been to a lot of your seminars and how you've spoken about this topic. So I think we have the best experts that we could have possibly found for today. And in order to find, a path and know, and that everyone out there knows that they're not alone. And there's statistics that 4 in 10 adults have experienced anxiety and depression or are dealing with it. And I love what you and Nicole always preach, that the medicine is within. And that was my experience firsthand as well with you guys. I was tired of taking medications and I wanted to just heal my body within. And so, I'm excited to learn more about you both, about what you have to offer during a time like this, because it's clearly an epidemic that's taking over society, a lot of youth as well. And I know that it can affect our body and it can take a toll on our health. So what can we do to manage it, and what have both of you been seeing within your fields and expertise, or with your clients, with your patients?
So let me tell you from my experience, anxiety and depression is quite prevalent. It is hidden. It's almost like a hidden epidemic. It's not a pandemic, but it's a hidden epidemic that is increasing in incidence across the world. Now, with the recent events that happens in most countries after the pandemic, it has even worsened. And in my practice, it's extremely prevalent, almost 80 to 90% of my patients. And I am a heart transplant cardiologist. So we evaluate patients for heart transplant for patients who have end-stage heart failure. What that means is that you have perhaps a 30 to 40% chance of living 2 to 3 years, unless you get your heart transplanted. Then you get a new life, you get a second chance at life, and then you go on with your life. Now, as you can see, that end-stage heart failure, if someone has it, and if they already had a problem with anxiety and depression, it could add more stress to their already existing condition and make it worse, and they can have a crisis, right? Out of crisis, people exhibit behaviors that the society considers is not acceptable. But if you understand why you exhibit that behavior, you can actually take care of it. That's one issue. The other issue is the depression and anxiety, to some extent, can make you look like you are non-compliant, that you don't take your medications as you are told, you don't follow up to the clinic when you're expected to follow up. But we ignore the fact that there is an underlying reason for it, and we most of the time don't solve it, but that label the patient wrongly, saying that they are non-compliant. They are non-compliant, they exhibit their behavior because of a medical reason. So this is quite prevalent, and there are times when my patients have been denied a chance at second chance because their anxiety or depression is not well treated. I mean, I saw a patient today who was deferred. We made a decision not to list the patient for transplant because he has not been treated for anxiety, right? So it is a very firsthand experience that we see in my practice, and I deal with it all the time. Granted, I am not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, and I'm not speaking on behalf of my institution or the university, but I'm speaking what I know as a physician and have seen about my patients. And I'm here to share additional information other than medications. Medications are easy to get, right? Mm-hmm. So as you know, anxiety and depression has a biopsychosocial space where you can have problems in all three areas or one or two areas, and these spaces change. The triggers that influence the person changes depends on what space is active at any given time. So in the biospace, we use medications. In the psychological space, we use counseling and group therapy and other formation of tribes and other therapy modalities. And in the social space, we don't use much. And that has become a major problem. The social space has become a major problem where it is sort of influencing our minds. And that can cause a lot of exacerbation of existing anxiety and depression or new incidents of anxiety and depression.
Wow. Wow. And Nicole, what has been your experience, within your field and how that's, manifested into like health problems, either internally or physically? And what have you done to be able to help them throughout their journey as well?
So I have, when patients come in, I see, I can almost tell when, they start telling me about their symptoms that it a lot of times stems from anxiety or stress. And this is one of the things that I want to emphasize with the audience is that we need to identify the symptoms or imbalances within our body before it starts developing into extreme symptoms or into disease. Because I have, when patients come in and they're like, I can't sleep, or I'm tired all the time, or I've been gaining weight. These are all like after effects of stress and anxiety that has already been developing. So, I want to talk a little bit more about mechanisms that we can do to identify these symptoms and then help to reduce them. But I see it on a day-to-day basis. And so oftentimes, people don't even recognize it because our tolerance for anxiety and stress, it just keeps going up. We have we compensate for these symptoms. And then before we know it, we feel like so overwhelmed or out of control. And then with like the pandemic, we've seen it just magnified. And again, people come in and they're like, they don't even know where to start, but we can, take simple steps and figure out where to start with it and improve. Mm-hmm. But also to Radha's point, like, we want to make sure we're looking at it from all the different perspectives. You might be at a level where you absolutely need, advanced level of care where you need to see a psychiatrist and you may need medication, but you may not, because, in my experience, a lot of times, patients have come to me and they were like, well, I went to my primary care and, said I'm tired or I have a down mood and they just gave me an antidepressant. Sometimes that's not the first step. So kind of evaluating it from all the different levels and making sure that we're safe about, the way we make recommendations and as the patient, the way you seek help and make sure that it's being treated in the right way.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, Nicole, because sometimes I think we avoid or just don't come to the realization that we are suffering from something very real that is anxiety and depression, right? And I remember that happened to me as well when I went to go see both of you, and I just sought help because it was I was, just not, I was resistant towards the thought of anxiety and depression affecting me to the level that it was. And, thanks to what you guys were saying of just being preventative about it, it really helped me manage it, not to get to the point where I had to take medication for it, but rather healing my body within. So what I would like to do is just take a couple questions from the audience that we have submitted from the emails. Again, remember, if any of you guys would like to submit any questions, email support@anxietyanddepressionseries.com. So we have a question here from Terry. She says, I have anxiety. What supplements do you recommend?
So great question. Thank you. So of course, caveat, if you're, when I recommend supplements, you always have to check with your doctor first. And, they need to make sure that it's not going to interact with any maybe medications you're taking or other supplements. But off the top of my head, things that I usually recommend are adaptogenic herbs. So those are things like rhodiola, ashwagandha, which help to control your cortisol response in your body, which is like your stress hormone. It's the hormone that puts you in that high adrenaline, or what they call fight or flight mode, or can be very low and make you feel very tired. What these adaptogens do is keep you in more of like a steady state, so that you're not constantly in this influx of hormone surges. Those are probably two of my favorites. Some other ones would be L-theanine. It's very calming. Magnesium glycinate, also very calming, great, like to help you sleep. With that, there's different types of magnesium, so make sure you're getting the right kind. There's others that will give you other side effects. So it's magnesium glycinate, omegas, omega-3s specifically. There's been studies on, helping with stress and anxiety is one of the many benefits of omega-3s. Always making sure they are high quality and they're tested for things like heavy metals. And then the last thing that I would say is a little bit more advanced, I guess, but there's a genetic mutation that more than 80% of the population has. It's called MTHFR. And what this means is your body's not methylating certain vitamins. And so that means you're not absorbing them. So people could have major deficiencies. And we've seen a lot of anxiety, depression, mood disorders, sleep disorders, when people have this genetic mutation and they aren't doing anything about it. So taking that methylated form of certain vitamins. Those are my top picks.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because even for me, I know we did like comprehensive lab tests, and we were able to identify certain markers that were off and, get me on the right kind of supplements. And it's, I'm a huge fan of magnesium glycinate. Didn't even know that there were several, but thanks to you, I was able to get the right kind of one. Now we have Kate, who has asked, is it okay to stay on antidepressants long-term if you've suffered from MDD, so major depressive disorder, 2 times, I believe? Should I repeat the question?
No, I get the question, but I think neither myself or Nicole is qualified to answer that question because we are not psychiatrists. Yeah. But what I could say as a fellow human being is knowing Western medicine and Eastern medicine, the medication use is, I want to say, let's divide that into 3 parts. Okay, we know that anxiety and depression is influenced by 3 spaces: the biological, the psychological, and the social space, right? So the question relates to the biological space. Can I use antidepressant to influence and change my biological makeup to circumvent or minimize the symptoms? Great question, and it is very important. Yes, you do have to use the medications to minimize symptoms, but all the while, it is, in my opinion, personally, as a person who has a disease, I would try to come off of the medications with the support of my doctor. So I would find out, I will ask the doctor, What are the other things can I do so that I can either reduce my antidepressants, or can I even come off of it over time in 2 to 3 years? What other things I can do? And when you look at those things that you want to do, one wants to look at the other two spaces, right? Not to replace a medicine by another medicine, but you want to look at the psychological space where should I go for counseling, right? Should I begin to use meditation? Can I use acupuncture, other alternative therapies? Can I use acupuncture? Can I use Tai Chi, something that calms me down? And that has been shown to improve your nervous function, your sympathetic nerve drive that gets triggered when you have anxiety. Can I use those? If I practice those on a regular basis for a year, can I have the medication I'm taking safely? And at some point, can I even come off of it? That's one space. The second space to look at is the social space. What am I doing in the social space that's actually triggering me? Am I listening to negative information on the TV? Am I listening to information on the social media that makes me feel like I'm worthless or I cannot accomplish it? And avoid those. It's completely avoid those, because we don't need that, right? We don't need someone telling, or somebody else or some other person in the social space telling us how we are not looking as good as somebody else, or not performing as good as somebody else, or not talented. Because every single human being has a talent. Every single human being is unique. And every one of us is divine. So you cannot compare, because uniqueness is the uniqueness of the human being. So my answer to that question is, look at the other two spaces, find alternative and complementary medical practitioners in your area, and then always work with your physician who prescribes the biological medications while you're adapting other things. It's a great, the first question was a great question, where you use supplements. Use supplements in conjunction with the discussion with your physician, and then make sure there are no side effects. That'll make the drug levels of the Western medicine you are taking too much or too little, and leads to catastrophic events. But it should always be a balancing thing. You make sure you balance the three areas. Ultimate aim should be to get rid of it, right? You don't want to have anxiety, and you don't want to have depression. So that should be the finish line. So every goal of anybody who has it is to get to that point. The good news is that the anxiety and depression lends itself to get to that point. It does. Why? Because anxiety in small doses makes you a winner, makes you a successful person. So anxiety in small dose is a good thing. It is created for survival of the human being, or for any being that's living. Anxiety, that is what gives you the fight or flight drive to fight against a threat. And the depression in a small dose might impair your abilities to function. But both anxiety and depression become an issue only when it disrupts your daily life. So all what you have to aim for is bringing the intensity of the anxiety and depression to the smaller level, where it is normal for anybody to have it. I have been depressed myself. I have had anxiety. I mean, every day I get anxiety. So it's just a matter of bringing it to a level that doesn't affect your daily life in a negative way, but actually provides a positive boost to accomplish what we need to accomplish in life.
Rada, that was amazing. And it was really refreshing to hear also that, it's not this big picture that we paint, that we have to get rid of it entirely and that something's wrong with us, right? It's more as in, let's get it down to a level where it's manageable, because it's about kind of embracing, like you said, that anxiety, the awareness that it gives you, that motivator to like move and finish a deadline, or the depression of feeling some kind of sadness in a moment of our lives, and just embracing that we are able to feel that emotion. So that was really refreshing to hear. And thank you, Rada. And you also mentioned earlier about meditation. And I know some people might find meditation a little overwhelming. So I guess if there was like just a certain baby step where people could start, what would you suggest?
Can you repeat that last part of the question, Alex?
Yeah, so for someone who's trying to enter into practicing meditation, what could be some steps where they could start off? Because personally, I mean, and I know a lot of other people, meditation is a little intimidating, and it's just, I sit down for 1 second and I'm already like, I need to get up and that's it. So where could someone start if they're seeking to start practicing that?
So here is my recommendation, and I recognize this, right? Meditation is something that is, you have to be with yourself. There's nobody else, right? I mean, that is the major problem for people who are experiencing anxiety and depression. And I have had it myself. When I'm anxious, I cannot sit down and meditate. I just can't, because you just cannot sit still. And it just frustrates you. Same with depression. And when you have depression, you don't even feel like sitting down or doing something about it. So those are inhibitors. They naturally inhibit you. So the best way I would suggest is doing this is in a group. So form a tribe, a group, locally. Identify fellow people who have the same issue, just like this panel, right? Identify a few people who are now wanting to experiment meditation, experiment what it does as a group. So you have a support, you can discuss it among yourself, and then you do it 5 minutes, not more than that. 5 minutes. Set a very low bar where you can have success, and the success breeds success until you find one day yourself, gee, I can sit with myself for 30 minutes in meditation and not feel anxious or depressed. Now that will be a revelation when that happens. Small doses in a group, support system, so that you can discuss your findings and feelings. Which are my recommendation if you want to try this. And that will be the most, I think, the most intelligent way to being successful in. Otherwise, it frustrates. Even for people who don't have any medical problems, the life that we live and the environment we live in itself is a hindrance for sitting down and thinking about meditation.
Can I add kind of my perspective on meditation, because I'm also an avid meditator. I think it has helped to transform my life because I too have dealt with anxiety in the past. And it's something that has really helped me take control of my life and feel much more aligned at times when in the past I would have gotten overwhelmed. But something that I tell my patients is I want you to start a routine. And so I too tell them, start with 5 minutes and just sit somewhere comfortable. I say usually first thing in the morning, let's start off our day like this. Sit in a comfortable position and just close your eyes and focus on deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And, when you first start this, you're going to have all those thoughts going through your mind, and you just have to acknowledge them and let go, refocus on your breathing, and just 5 minutes a day. And then as it starts to become easier, then you can start adding on time to that. But with meditation, the thing that I always emphasize with patients is the more you do this, after you create this routine and you get in a habit of doing this every day for 15 or 20 minutes, you later in the day, when you're not meditating, you're going to start responding to things in a different way as if you were still meditating, which is why part of the reason why it's so powerful.
Wow. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Dr. Rada.
Alex, I just want to just expand on that a little bit. So, meditation is something about touching base with your inner self. And inner self has 5 components. And and I think one of the things that you want to do is you want to understand your inner self, of what are those components, because most of the time, as this has been one of my focus in the past 25 years. Who am I? What am I? Why is my inner being anxious? Why is my inner being feel depressed? And who is it that's feeling anxious or depressed? And that is a question that most of us have lost touch with. We have lost touch with our inner being, And therefore, every time you are not in touch with your being, you lose the power that gives you the strength to handle any challenge in life. And usually, I think there are 5 levels in you, and I don't know whether your audience can read this in my book that I published. It's called Survival. It's about being your own healer. And on top is the physical level, which is a physical intelligence. Everyone has that. And the second one is the mental level. And if you speak to any psychiatrist, they are going to say that you have a mental disorder. So anxiety and depression is categorized as a mental disorder. In fact, it is a mentally manifesting disorder and not a mentally existing disorder. And then the third level is emotional. In fact, anxiety is about emotional fear. It is the fear of the unknown by definition. It's the fear of the unknown or uncertainty of not knowing what would happen in the future or what exists out there. I don't know. And then below that emotional level is the spiritual level of the human being. And then at the bottom is the unknown level or universal level that we all belong to. So the key point, if you look at meditation, those arrows actually bring you to be in touch with your spiritual and the universal level, where your true being actually resides. So the key point of meditation is not to get rid of anxiety or depression. That's a side effect. That is a benefit that happens as a side effect. The true purpose of doing the meditation is to know you and feel you and to reconnect with you and feel the power of you within yourself so that you can be in touch with it, which can then continue to channel your medication. So as Dr. Srednicki put it, the reason for getting to know you is like getting to know a little puppy or a child. Just small doses. Start 5 minutes. Start feeling the breath. Start feeling your being. Start feeling how you sense yourself. That's all you need to do. Don't expect any kind of benefits right away, but there is a cumulative benefit. As you begin to feel yourself, it will snowball into you knowing yourself much better and feeling much more stronger and confident about yourself.
Thank you. I'll jump to the next question. So Lucia asked, my depression has gotten significantly worse. I am wondering what can be said about generational trauma. I also have children that now suffer with depression, anxiety, and OCD. Was this a result of epigenetics? Sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Srednicki, you want to go on that?
Well, I was just going to say, yes, genetics can play a role in some of these traits. But then there's always the other side of the coin. Some genetics can manifest and some can be, when we talk about epigenetics, we can actually modify those. So I think, some of the when you're bringing up your children, if you're, talking about all of these, all of the family history, and you're putting this in the children's head, that might foster them starting to develop these habits because they're thinking, or not habits, symptoms, because they're thinking about it at a different level. But talking through things and implementing things like self-care, supplements, things like that, helping to foster so that these epigenetic traits don't manifest. It does play a role, but sometimes they can be modified. I think Radha can probably expand on that.
That is correct. So just because you have a familial predisposition does not necessarily mean the offspring has to manifest it. I have had hundreds of patients who have a family history of diabetes or heart disease, but they don't manifest it in their lifetime. On the other hand, I have had patients who do not have family history. Their parents didn't have heart attack, did not have anxiety, did not have diabetes, and then they have it, right? So genetic predisposition is a predisposition. It is not a guarantee of a manifestation. for manifestation to happen with the predisposition, the person has to have other traits that has to come into effect for that predisposition to manifest. From an epigenetic perspective, if we behave in certain way, and then that will start changing our own genes, which will then be transmitted to the children, and the children will have the changes in the gene. It might not happen in one generation. It could take 2-3 generations to happen. So you could skip a generation with regard to these changes. The studies and research that has focused on rats, we have epigenetics have done a lot of studies in diabetes. When we had rats that are obese rats and then put obesity, and then they became diabetic. And then these are artificially induced rats that did not have predisposition before. And the offsprings of those rats had diabetes and obesity. Now that's how the epigenetics works. So yes, you can have generational predisposition, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's guaranteed. You can avoid it by trying to change the way of the epigenetics. And the way to change that is to change yourself. And changing yourself is where you use different tools, but always the focus has to be about you, not about the disease. So the more you focus on the disease, the more you forget about yourself. So my recommendation always is focus on you, use tools that exist like medications, supplements, and as Dr. Srednicki put it, those to help you minimize the influence of the disease so that you can focus on you. And then finally, you will spend more time focusing on you and less time on the disease, and the disease becomes less and less and less.
And, something that we've been seeing is also how much anxiety and depression has skyrocketed, right? Especially within our youth and within what we've been seeing, and statistically also, suicide rates have gone up as well. And so we do have 2 questions here from Shayla and Elaine, which are pretty similar, about how there's this anxiety and depression in young children. And they ask any advice on how to help a loved one who is struggling desperately, calls me hysterically on a regular basis, yet is unwilling to make any changes. And I think that there's a lot of parents here today that might be wondering, how can they help their children that are experiencing this? Any suggestions?
I think from my perspective, it's really hard when people don't want to make changes or take action. But what I have found in situations like this, that if we can even get them in the door, and I mentioned earlier about blood work, and when we can find things, it's not like we have a specific blood test that says you have anxiety or depression. We have things that can kind of allude to, well, maybe that's causing this. When patients see that, they see these markers and what, oh, well, there's an answer. Maybe that's why I feel horrible. Then they're more willing to take action. So I know if it's I've even done it with some, when parents bring in their kids, when we can kind of explain these tests, and this is why you maybe feel like this. So now let's change some of your eating habits. And then we teach them breathing exercises, and then we get them to start opening up. And a lot of times, they'll start to feel a little bit better, and then they're more motivated to do things.
Yeah, I think so. It's just, the question is, what are they resisting? When someone says they don't want to make changes, all my patients in my heart failure clinic don't want to make changes, right? And I'll tell you a story. I had this nice gentleman who had severe heart failure, who really needed transplant. And we kept evaluating him, but he wasn't meeting the criteria. Why? Because he was non-compliant. He was not willing to make the changes. He was expecting something to happen spontaneously out of the blue that will make him change. One fine day in the clinic, I sat down. So he was getting worse and worse, and our transplant committee did not accept him as a transplant candidate. That means he has a very, very short life to live. I kind of liked the guy. So when he came to the clinic one day, me and my nurse practitioner sat down and I talked to him as a person. I didn't talk to him as a physician. That day I realized we do a lot of wrong talking to our patients as a physician. What I did is that I said, Mr. So-and-so, I am worried about you. I did not tell him I'm worried about your disease. I did not tell him you're not doing something right. I told him, I am really worried about you. And he looked at me for the first time and said, why? I said, because your life is very much shortened. And I'm worried that you're not going to survive the next couple of years. All of a sudden, he looked at me and said, what do I have to do? I said, you need to go for rehab. You have to learn some exercise, get stronger so that you can have the surgery. And he goes, yeah, I'll do whatever it takes. It is a very simple change in conversation. All the other time, what my team was telling him is, Mr. So-and-so, you are not a candidate for transplant because you are not following our instruction. You are not doing this. You are not doing that. We were focusing on what they are not doing and telling them, you have a disease. So the key point is to look at that person as a person and connect with them. So if the child, I mean, you have to take children because they're in a very tender age. The communication style of letting the child know, I don't think I would tell them that you have this condition, we need to do something, because they don't even understand what that means. Mm-hmm. So one, introducing the kid to other kids that has it so that they feel like it's not something abnormal. Second, first thing is to identify anything as an abnormal is a wrong thing to do. We grow up thinking that way. We grow up looking at things as black and white, normal and abnormal, right? That's not it. It's a difference. It's a deviation from a spectrum of where you are. Right? It just so happened it's different than mine, so it's different, but that doesn't mean it's abnormal. So introducing to other kids, make them feel like there are other kids there, and then see if there are group therapies for children. And the other thing, who is giving the advice and the counseling? It has to be someone other than the loved one so that the child can look up to, or because most of the time children tend to resist parents because all what we as parents do is tell them what not to do. So they are trained to think what my father or mother is going to say is the next thing not to do for me, and I'm not going to listen to them. So that's how children always grow up. Mm-hmm. So income and create a team. I'm not saying the parents should eliminate themselves as being part of it. They need to be supportive. They need to be part of the team, but there should be other team members who can then help the parents make this happen.
That was a wonderful response. Thank you for sharing that story, Radha. And then here we have another question that says, I'm aware that suicides, it's from Luke. I'm aware that suicides among the young are increasing at an alarming rate. I don't understand how this is a physical thing brought on by toxins, maybe vaccines, or is it a sense of hopelessness? So I guess the question here is, where is this all stemming from?
So I know in my line of work, I deal a lot with toxins or identifying toxins, and because they do cause a lot of these symptoms a lot of times. I mean, there's thousands of chemicals that we're ingesting, breathing, putting on our skin every day. And this just accumulates. And not only does it cause anxiety and depression, it causes accelerated aging and fatigue and sleep issues and increased risks of cancer and Alzheimer's and all of these horrible things. So thank you to whoever brought that question up. We need to be aware of toxins and do things to try to get them out of our bodies. So one of the very first things I do with all of my patients, if you're the healthiest person in the world, or you're about to see Dr. Gopalan for a heart transplant, I'm going to tell you to do a good detox. So the detox that I use in my clinic, it's a 21-day program that is it helps you reset your body, clean up your organs. And when patients go through this, they tell me like, wow, I feel lighter. I have more energy. I have less joint pain. I'm more motivated, sleeping better. And by the end of it, it's like they've found this next purpose in their life. And that's like how they can take their health to the next level. And so I've had people across the spectrum that they benefit in one way or another when they go through this program. But then they want to sustain after they've gone through it because they actually feel good. So to me, this is like one of the best ways to help start to get rid of toxins from your body. There's tons of other things out there, but this is like something easy. You can do this at home. You commit 21 days to it. The reason it's 21 days is because of something that's called neuroplasticity. That's where your brain starts to create new habits. So then your body's more focused on healing and wellness and the fact that you're feeling good versus sometimes more of these negative symptoms that you don't have to deal with potentially as much because we're getting toxins out of your body.
And, I'm a big advocate for that detox. That's actually how, I ended up becoming Nicole's patient because I had ended up at the hospital, and then I finally was ready to take action over the anxiety and these severe symptoms that I was feeling, and just that they were starting to manifest physically. And so I did start off with that detox. And for me, the difference was life-changing. And I think apart from all the health benefits that you just mentioned, because those are quite, it happens, right? You've witnessed them throughout the detox, you feel your body detoxing, and then even after, whether it's physically or just emotionally. But I also think being able to do something for yourself is the number one thing where you start feeling proud of. And personally, it was kind of just like this opening moment to other resources and just focusing on my health. And I wouldn't say it was like something that completely, cured my anxiety or depression. No, it was just something that put me on the right track and on this new journey of putting myself first. And it felt good to think I was taking care of my health. And I think that was a huge motivator for me. Again, just doing something for myself. And I do see it in people that have, and friends that have had anxiety and depression. Once they either start meditating or go on a detox or, start going to the gym, doing something for their body that they've been postponing. It's kind of like this gateway into like just this new health perspective. And I love the product. I've done the detox. I'm on it right now. Because my body started needing it again. And for anyone that's interested, just email support and they will get you the link for it. Either way, we'll be sending you guys the link as well. But if you haven't received it, go ahead and email support@anxietyanddepressionseries.com and we'll get you the link so you can start your detox. And Nicole, I have a question about the detox actually, or Radha, whoever would like to answer. Does it help with gut health? Because I've also heard as I started studying this and just curing the body within, I've also heard how like gut health can be a huge factor within your emotional state, anxiety, depression, so forth.
So gut health is very important. I think Dr. Svetnicki will attest to it. The detox, one of the things I was going to add, and I'm glad you asked the question, Alex, is the detox actually does something called emotional stabilization. And if you look at people, when I am anxious, I will be the first one to admit when I'm anxious, I reach out to my teacup and make a cup of tea and drink it. There are days when I have extreme anxiety. I will drink 5 to 6 cups of tea, which is caffeine, right? Which then makes you wired up. But what I'm explaining right now is called emotional consumption. Whether it is a beverage or a food, there is something called emotional eating, emotional consumption. As a result of feeling anxious or depressed, what the detox does, it separates you. It actually divorces you from emotional eating. So after you have done it for 21 days, you really feel much more emotionally stabilized. And the most important part is you begin to learn how and what hunger feel like. You are really a friend of the hunger feeling, and you become more stabilized. So it eliminates emotional eating. What that means is that you actually recognize you are feeling anxious. That facilitates mindfulness. And then mindfulness is the first step in trying to connect with yourself. So I think in my personal experience, I have done the detox several times for many years. I continue to do it twice a year, the 21-day, and then I do the mini cleanse or detox 10 days twice a year. That's 4 times a year. You reset yourself, and every time you do it, you feel how you connect yourself. Remember, in the previous conversation, I said the key focus of addressing any issue, especially mental, emotional issues, is about the ability to connect with your true self, right? I mean, that's important. The food and the diets that exist in the present day in the world actually takes you away from that. It separates you from your own self. And then you add the toxins, either heavy metals or other toxins that, hormonal toxins. And then more importantly, the emotional toxins that we receive every single day through outlets of media, social media, and other medias, and even people, steals your ability to connect with your own self. So the first step, the reason I think Dr. Srednicki prescribes this, the first step, is to clean the slate. Start with a clean slate. Start with who you are, and then start progressing from there so that it lays a foundation for success. So yes, gut health has a lot to do with emotional aspects and behaviors and manifestations, just like emotional aspects have a lot to do with how you eat and what you eat.
Mhm. Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's true. I mean, prior to the detox, I was experiencing these high highs and these extremes of like anxiety, and then the crash of like the depression, and just like a lower state. And like you were mentioning, Radha, I think for the first time ever, when I was done with the detox, I was like, wow, this is how my body should be feeling. Like, this is how I should be operating physically and mentally and emotionally, and just, being active throughout the day. And then when it was time to sleep, having a healthy schedule. And like you were mentioning, just we are constantly consuming these toxins. And so you start to realize also, just certain things that you should be eating and how they affect you. Because even now that I decided to go on the detox again, like you said, I do it like once, twice a year. Even now that I've decided to go on it, it was because I started noticing, and that was something I wasn't aware of before. I didn't have that mindfulness of something's wrong with my body or something's wrong emotionally. And so just recently I was like, oh, I'm starting to feel a little bit more anxious, or a little bit more like tired, or what's going on. And so I got myself back on that detox, because I was able to identify in the first place that something was not balanced. And no, of course.
I think that's also why your skin is glowing.
Thank you. Yes, that was a huge factor for me too. I was dealing with a lot of skin issues because of, again, emotionally, everything manifests. And so I'm so glad that got cleared up, because there are things that it's just a vicious circle that keep affecting you. And within your experience, when people have done the detox, have they mentioned not only health-wise, physically, but emotionally, are there testimonials of people that say, this is how I should be feeling, or my anxiety and depression has gotten better?
Definitely. I've had, patients that say, they have a down mood or feel depressed, or feel anxious. And I think one of the ways it physiologically like works within you is it can help regulate like hormone pathways. So I've had men do the detox and their testosterone levels, like on a few cases, have gone up almost 300 points. So if you think about a man that's testosterone deficient, that could be the reason for his depression. Because he's just feeling horrible all the time and going through the detox. That's a perfect example of somebody who has really like transformed. But like what you have been talking about, connecting with yourself, that's so empowering. That has helped to pull people, out of that stuck feeling, that, that sadness or, loss of motivation. So it definitely, I've gotten feedback about that and testimonials that it's definitely been helpful with. The other thing with anxiety is there are, when we were talking about supplements earlier, I was talking about adaptogenic herbs, and that there are adaptogenic herbs in the detox. So it's naturally working to calm that stress response, so it can help to reduce anxiety as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the amazing part about that, Nicole, is we did my blood labs prior. And then after I did the detox, because I was like, I'm probably just imagining this, like imagining that I'm starting to feel better, and being able to see and have that reflection within my blood results after the detox. You realize that like your hormones are back to where they should be. Any certain levels that are, were spiked or decreased. So it's nice to see that, and the inflammatory levels. So to put it in facts, it's nice to know that it's not just mental, and it's a true change that your body is witnessing. Yeah. And well, we're hitting close to the end of this session, and I would love to be able to get to all the questions, but if you guys have any additional questions, be sure to email support. And as well, if you want your detox, email support will get you set up with everything you need. And again, we're not alone in this. We have experts, people who are going through this today, people who have joined or either going through it or have a child that is, or a loved one. So thank you guys for taking this action. And do you guys have any final words, Dr. Nicole, Dr. Radha, for the audience today? Oh, I see your dog.
I just want to say, for people that need extra love in their life, they should get a puppy.
That's true. Step one.
I will honestly say, though, that's not a joke. I was never planning to get a dog. I got my puppy Bunny a little over a year ago. And, for people that do, you're alone, he has changed my life. I know people have told me they've seen, I'm not so like high strung all the time. I've actually calmed down a little bit. And again, connecting with self, like all the feelings of love for this dog and getting that like love from him all the time has really been transformational. And it really is, that's why there's pet therapy. There's really, pets can be really helpful too.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why there's like service animals and, the emotional support dogs. So, that could also be another alternative for our viewers. And Dr. Radha, do you guys have any final words for, the people who have joined us here today in this anxiety and depression series, whether they're going through it or want to help a loved one? Any final words for them?
Yes, and I think one of the things is, to Nicole's point, I want to comment on the pets. Pets actually allow you to connect at the spiritual level, because what you do for the pets, you're not expecting anything in return. You're actually giving something, because you are not, they obviously return something back in the form of love. But when you take care of them, spend your time, you are actually giving your spirit. It helps you to connect at the spiritual level. So that is a good, the pets always have been a therapeutic medium that we have used in hospitals and other areas. So that's therapeutic. The important thing I want to say is that instead of thinking of, in medicine, we like to give diagnosis so that we can prescribe a medicine. All right. So, and then what we don't do is that we don't quantify how much it is. And of course, in depression, you call it major depression, and non-major depression, and you differentiate. Depends on the quantity. But always think it's a spectrum. Remember, anxiety and depression are normal feelings. I always, when I trained as a medical student, I couldn't understand psychiatry because there's nothing physical about it. It's always about definitions. And I said, when does anxiety becomes an anxiety disorder? When does anxiety disorder becomes a disease? When does depression becomes a disorder? So it's only, it's different levels. So all what one has to do is minimize the level of anxiety or the depression, right? You might start with medication, but always think in terms of be, do, have. We do take medications, we do take other methods, but anything you do should be focused with the idea of changing yourself. That should be the finish line. The being, who are you being? You need to, one has to look at themselves and recognize and respect that they are unique. They deserve to be loved. They deserve to be respected. They deserve to be recognized, and they are special. And strive to be that person. And I think success will follow. So just don't always focus on the disease, because there is a big saying, a man meets his own destiny in the path he took to avoid. So if we always try to avoid a disease, we are going to end up with the disease. That's not the focus. Focus is about the person, and just be the person that you like to be and try to do things that makes that happen for you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Radha. Nicole, any final words for our amazing audience that has joined us tonight?
Well, thank you for everyone for joining. That's, the first step to, helping yourself, right? Listening to recommendations, let it kind of sit within you and see, of these things that we've talked about, what can you identify with? One thing that I just want to say, learn to identify some of your triggers, because we can't always, change what the triggers are, right? If it's somebody talking bad to us or whatever, but we can modify our response to it. So if we can identify triggers, we can modify our response, which will then equal a different outcome.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you guys. And thank you guys both so much for your time. I'm so glad that we were able to get two amazing experts into this room tonight to help guide all of us. We have a big community. Thank you to the audience for joining in tonight, for being proactive, whether it's to take care of yourself or a loved one, and for just loving yourself enough and caring enough to take these steps and be here with us throughout the anxiety and depression series. And I hope whether it's been today or throughout the series that you've been able to either pick up on a technique, a solution, something to guide you towards the right journey. And just remember, you're not alone. We have an enormous community here, filled with probably hundreds of thousands of people watching with you today. So you're not alone. And if you guys have any questions, please reach out to us at support. And thank you, Dr. Nicole, Dr. Radha, once again. It's been lovely being able to spend the evening with all of you today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night, everyone.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.